Good evening, fantasy football fans. Welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Slant, brought to you by ProFootballFocus.com Fantasy and powered by DraftKings. Michael and I, we are here after our first week of the actual NFL games in the regular season, so that certainly makes us happy. We're actually recording this during the first of the two Monday night games, so we won't have any coverage there, although it looks like Michael's favorite offseason punching bag, the Giants, are off to a wonderful start in terms of covering Calvin Johnson. They should probably get on that. But, Michael, I'm assuming you're already pretty happy given how well your 49ers and, frankly, my Panthers did at the 4 o'clock hour. How are you doing?
Yeah, no, that 49er game was over in about 5 minutes, so I didn't actually have to stick around that long for that one. Hey, the Panthers made it pretty exciting, though, towards the end there.
They really did. The defense was legit for 3 quarters, and then I think they thought they had it wrapped up. So they kind of made it interesting until Luke Kuechly was like, no, we're good. Let's end this thing. So in the end, I survived and I'm happy.
So, Scott, what are the odds now of Derek Anderson being named the permanent starter? Is it 50%? Is it 75%? I mean, put a number on it. Legitimately.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough. Now that his trade value is so high, I thought maybe we could try to trade him for Jimmy Clausen. Get that other hot quarterback back in town if we can do it.
I'm pretty sure the Rams need something, so they might bite off on that. You never know.
I'm fine with that, too. We do have Joe Webb waiting in the wings. But, Michael, there's just way too much actual stuff to talk about to waste too much more time on the Panthers. So I think we should just go ahead and get to it. And let's start with the most exciting game of Sunday. That's obviously the Jaguars and Eagles. I mean, I was pretty excited early in the game when the Jaguars were up 17-0. I don't know if you play any of those like survivor leagues, Michael, but the Eagles' loss would have taken out quite a bit of competition there, as my mighty Jets ended up holding off the Raiders there. So didn't actually happen, but there's some really noteworthy fantasy points here that I'm just going to tackle in order with you, Michael. Let's start with Allen Hurns. He had a huge game with his exactly. So Hurns had a huge game. I think he's an undrafted rookie. I literally don't know very much about him, but he had a really big preseason. I think his first 2 NFL catches in this game were both touchdowns, and he had more than 100 yards on the game. Are you buying into him at all? Is he a guy that you should probably waste your first waiver pick on this week?
No. Absolutely not. No. Look, he had I'm very happy for him on a personal level. No, definitely not. I mean, look, he's still way down in the pecking order as far as targets go. And look, do I think? And look, let's face it, the Eagles secondary is not exactly top notch. It's not exactly Panther-esque. So no, I think he got lucky. Look, he had 4 catches, which again, it's not like he was a target hog yesterday either. So no, please. Do not waste a waiver wire on Allen. Look, if you have him by some miracle, or you get him on the cheap this week and want to flip him, more power to you. But if you're expecting him to step in as your wide receiver too, I think you need some help.
Let me play devil's advocate just briefly.
No.
I mean, Hurns, you say he wasn't a target hog, but he had 9 targets. That's the second most on the team. And granted, Cecil Shorts was out, but isn't this the sign that Hurns is taking over for your boyfriend Allen Robinson as the third wide receiver?
I don't think it would happen in 1 week, personally. Look, I still fully expect Marquise Lee to be the top target there. It's obvious they're still utilizing Mercedes Lewis in some fashion. I'm not saying it's major, but I still think they're going to stick to sort of the Gus Bradley school of thought, which is, hey, they just want to pound the ball on the ground. So, for me, it's a matter of the offense is not exactly going pass heavy. And look, he's still pretty low on the depth chart. Until he gets a start one of these weeks, consistently, then I'm not buying it, personally. Are you? Are you going to put a waiver claim on Allen Hurns, Scott? Please tell me now.
No. I mean, I would if I was in the league enough. Dynasty format potentially. I do think he's going to outperform Allen Robinson this season at this point. But
sure, he probably already did in that one game, quite honestly.
But you brought up Marcus Lee. I think he is the more important news story here. He kind of slides under the radar, had some sort of an uneven game, but led the team with 10 targets.
And he had 6 for 60, which isn't, I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at. That's still a pretty decent game for a rookie receiver in his first game.
Not bad at all. This seemed like a really sneaky move on the Jaguars to me. I feel like he really established himself as the primary target for the team. You said that they didn't really go run heavy here. It's really hard to know exactly what their game plan would have been, given that they were up big and then they weren't, and then they were turning the ball over.
Sure.
Hard to know, but I mean, I'm buying into Lee in a big way. And so let's take a quick aside here before we get into the rest of the players in this game. Here are my updated rookie receivers, the top 5 for their 2014 seasons only. So we're not talking dynasty value here. We're talking about rookies this season. Here are my guys, Michael. Tell me how crazy I am. Number 1, Brandon Cooks. Number 2, Kelvin Benjamin. Probably not going to tell me I'm crazy there.
Not crazy.
Number 3, I have Marcus Lee there. I pushed him ahead of Mike Evans and Sammy Watkins. He actually led these 5 guys in targets yesterday, although Evans had 9, Cooks 8, Benjamin 8, Watkins only 4. Am I crazy to push Lee up this high? I think he's going to be an impact player right away this season, maybe a top 40 receiver.
No, I don't think you're crazy at all, quite honestly. I think, and I definitely agree. I think it's going to be Cooks and Benjamin in the top 2. But any of those 5, I think, in any order makes sense to me, especially Lee. I mean, yeah, like you said, he's going to be the primary target there in Jacksonville. So, no, I don't think that's crazy at all.
Yeah, Lee may be one of the guys you should waste a waiver priority on instead of Hearns. But let's get back to this game.
Please don't do that. Please pick up Marquise Lee before you pick up Allen Hurd.
Completely agree. Okay, let's talk about the Eagles. Man, Nick Foles was terrible, right? I mean, are you worried about this? He had 1 interception and 2 lost fumbles. Really salvaged the fantasy day late with some, thanks to some blown coverages by the Jaguars. And, Foles does have that sort of magic where he makes defenses do stupid stuff. It's how he got to fantasy glory last year. You can tell where my opinion is coming from on this. Are you terrified about Foles, or are you just writing this off as the upstart Jags are getting there on defense?
A little bit of both, quite honestly. Personally, I'm not panicking yet on Foles. I mean, I think any informed fantasy person had to realize he was going to regress a little bit. I mean, that 27-2 touchdown interception ratio wasn't going to be repeated, and if you thought so, then you're high. But do I think he could match the same number of touchdowns and yards this year? Yeah, and look, it's not like he was exactly a quick starter in games last year either. And look, the final point is the Jacksonville defense is not bad. I mean, it's not great, but look, I would take them over a lot of other defenses after yesterday. So, no, I think Foles is going to be fine. I mean, I don't know where you were going with this. I would be concerned more with, I think, Matthews' potential, at least early on, because he was, I think I had down he was 6th or 7th in target rankings last year or yesterday amongst Eagles players. So, no, I think Foles is fine, and I think there's just going to be a lot of mouths to feed.
Was there a perception that Jordan Matthews, was going to be one of the primary early options for the Eagles this season? I didn't think that existed. I thought everybody was sort of on board that Jeremy Maclin and Riley Cooper were the 2 primary guys there.
Yeah, I think, for me anyway, there was a chance he could overtake Cooper anyway on the outside. And look, there was, I think, one game where he got 10 targets in the preseason. So it certainly looked like they wanted to give him a chance. But, it's not going to happen this year, and he certainly doesn't belong in your rookie top 5 by any means.
Yeah, he wasn't there for me to begin with, but I guess I had strong opinions about the Eagles. Let's talk about one bright spot for the team, though. That was Darren Sproles. 11 carries. I mean, I think it's probably been 3 years since he had 11 carries in a game. Also had 6 targets. Didn't do much as a receiver here, but did have a long touchdown run. I mean, in my mind, Sproles is probably a top 25 back the rest of the season. I was that impressed.
Wow.
Just getting that much workload. And so I don't know if you agree about that, but let's compare him to some other players that are sort of passing down role backs for their teams. Would you take Darren Sproles or Fred Jackson for the rest of the season?
Oh, boy, that's not a fun choice. I would probably, personally, no, I might go Sproles by a nose. I might go Sproles.
Yeah, I think they're both top 30 backs, but I prefer Sproles. Sproles or Pierre Thomas?
Probably Pierre Thomas for me.
Okay, I'm going to go Sproles there too. Again, I think Thomas is close to a top 30 back. Sproles or Joique Bell?
Oh, probably Sproles. Yeah.
Okay.
Especially in PPR leagues, especially Sproles.
But I mean, even in standard formats, getting 17 opportunities here. I mean, I'm not sure that's an expectation going forward necessarily, but if he gets 10 a game, I think he's definitely a top 25 back. Do you think he's top 25?
No. Personally, I mean, look, they were behind for a majority of the game yesterday, and I think that probably dictated the game plan a little bit. But I don't know. I think, he looked good when he had the ball. I just don't know that those 11 carries are going to be sustainable, personally.
I don't know. I mean, I think I would take the over on 75 carries this season at this point. Wow. So, I mean, that would be a huge improvement for Sproles. And it's not like Sproles is in there on all passing downs as a means to protect Nick Foles. I mean, that's right. I just feel like he's the second best receiver on the team at this point. So,
could be.
I think Sproles is legit. Okay, let's move on. Let's go play a little game of are you panicking and are you buying? So I'm more excited about are you panicking. So let's start there. Michael, are you panicking on Jamaal Charles? Just 7 carries for 19 yards. Major concerns about the offensive line entering the season. How far is he dropping for you?
Not that far. I look, he still has enough, I think, natural ability to be up there for me. I mean, and look, Reed even admitted today that it was a mistake to only give him those 7 carries. I mean, I think they realized what a mistake it was, even when they got behind to take the ball out of his hands. So, no, I'm not worried yet. Are you?
I'm not worried. I think I would still take him number 1 overall if I could do it again. I think they just saw that Donnie Avery had the hot hand, Michael, and they just wanted to stick with him.
Yeah, okay. And no, you could definitely put a waiver wire claim on him for sure.
Maybe I will. Are you panicking on Eddie Lacy? 12 for 34, had a concussion, conceivably outplayed by James Starks, but playing against Seattle, who's probably the number 1 run defense, short of my Panthers. You worried about Eddie Lacy at all?
Okay, I think you got, for me, concussion aside, which we don't know the severity.
Let's ignore that. We don't know. We don't know if he's playing this week or not. But
right.
Let's ignore that.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be panicked yet for him. I mean, like you said, he played a very good defense, if not the top defense in the league on the road, mind you. So, yeah, no, I'm not worried in the least yet. Now, if he plays and does that again, yeah, maybe, but. No, after playing the best defense in the league on the road, I'm not worried one bit.
Yeah, I should have written this down, but I think the Packers are playing a really good run defense again this week. So, this may not be
playing the Jets. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. This is probably a pretty good week to sit Lacy regardless. And I know that may seem kind of crazy for a guy you probably drafted top 5 at the position, but I'm not worried about him long term though either. He had 2.9 yards after contact per attempt here. Pretty solid right there with James Starks. There were no holes there for him to work with. I think better days are ahead. Okay, panicking on this player. Are you panicking on Torrey Smith? He had 7 targets, which sounds good in of itself, but this was during the massive comeback attempt by the Ravens where Joe Flacco threw the ball more than 60 times. 7 targets for him against 15 each for Steve Smith and Dennis Pitta. Are you panicking on Torrey Smith?
I might. Actually, I might. And we had this conversation before. I was one of those that I didn't see the value in the Steve Smith signing when they originally did it, but look, he's apparently got some gas left in the tank, man. I mean, he looked pretty good yesterday. So, I probably would worry about Smith. Not from a talent level, just from a distribution level, meaning I think they're going to try to find ways to get Smith the ball just because he can make things happen. So, I might put him in the. He's definitely in the maybe category for me as far as panicking goes.
I'm in full-on panic mode about Torrey Smith. I feel like this is an indictment of a few things. One, it's an indictment of Torrey Smith himself. I think it's also an indictment of the Panthers and that Steve Smith is like, oh, freedom. Look at this beautiful elite quarterback in Joe Flacco throwing me the ball now.
They're it 60 times. I'm in heaven now.
Yeah, I mean, if Torrey Smith isn't as good as Steve Smith and Dennis Pitta, I think that says a lot about Torrey Smith. I'm in full-on panic mode. I would definitely trade him for, I'm not sure who you're going to be able to get in that range. I would trade him for Darren Sproles if you're looking to fill a flex position. I would think about trading him. If I could get Kelvin Benjamin for him, I would probably think about that as well. He's not in my top 30 at receivers the rest of the season here. All right, are you panicking on Tom Brady? 249 won.
Yes.
Okay, don't even need to say the stats. I was watching this game. I'm good friends with a Dolphins fan, and he looked a lot worse than the stats showed. He did lose 2 fumbles here, which also hurt in fantasy. But, my number one thing for Brady is he really needs to learn not to throw the ball to Brandon LaFell, who probably turned in the worst performance I've ever seen at wide receiver. He didn't have any catches. He committed multiple offensive penalties. It was a disaster. But I think that's kind of telling you the point.
Target department.
That's kind of telling you a little bit about the team in that they don't really have that many good players right now. Dobson was out still. Gronkowski was in and out of this game, and pretty easy to take out of the game otherwise. Part of that might be the Dolphins' defense. So they were getting to Brady all day. But, the offensive line may be a concern too. You're panicked on Brady. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, all of the above, quite honestly. I think the line is probably, it's definitely not as good as it has been in years past. Like you and I talked about this yesterday, it's just the talent around him is nowhere near what it used to be. I think, people take for granted how good of players he had to throw to. And even a guy like Gronkowski, like you said, was only in there, I think, a third of the snaps for him. So, yeah, I would be and look, until they can, they apparently do not trust the running game either whatsoever, and which means they're going to be checking it a lot. And if you can't get the ball into some of those guys, you're not going to move the ball. And like you said, the Dolphins' defensive line just wreaked havoc on them all day yesterday. So, and I think that proves if you have a decent defensive line, that you're going to be able to cause problems. So, I would be I think hitting the panic button at this point.
I think I'm reserving judgment a little bit here. This is maybe selective memory, but I feel like the Dolphins have, to a certain extent, had the Patriots' number, maybe because it was the exposure. And also, they've had great pass rushers before this year, and I'm not sure how many other teams are going to be able to put that sort of defensive effort together against the team. So I'm going to wait a couple of weeks before I make a decision here. Obviously, it looked bad, but I want to see, with Gronkowski getting healthier, with Dobson hopefully getting back, maybe they can get a little bit better there. But certainly I was super high on Brady before the year, and I'm not feeling so good about it right now. Okay, are you panicked on Michael Crabtree? He was questionable going into this game, but ended up playing, had just 4 targets compared to 9 for Anquan Bolden and 6 for Vernon Davis. Worried about Crabtree at all?
Personally, no. I think, like you and I talked about, that game was over pretty quickly. So I don't, no, and look, that's not to say I think Crabtree's going to be like a wide receiver 1 the rest of the way, but I'm not going to let this game affect that. This game was just quirky from the get-go. Kaepernick, looked really good too, but the stats don't show it because he didn't have to do a whole lot after midway through the first. So, not yet on Crabtree. I think I would, hold on. And look, the other good news for Crabtree is the passing game looks pretty decent in San Francisco when it hasn't in prior years or even this preseason. So, no, I'm in a hold pattern for Crabtree right now.
Okay, I'm definitely low on Crabtree. I've kind of been low on him all along. To me, this sort of confirmed it. It's the people that were defending Crabtree as a top 15 guy entering the season were sort of relying on the Colin Kaepernick takes one read and then runs approach to the offense that he had shown in some previous stints with Crabtree. To me, this game really demonstrated that Kaepernick was advanced as a quarterback, taking multiple reads, throwing the ball downfield to Vernon Davis. Very impressed by Kaepernick. And to me, that means that Crabtree, who overlaps in terms of skill and talent with some other options on the team, Bolden included, I just don't think he's going to necessarily be the focal point of the offense. Meanwhile, we beat that point to death, so I'm not going to really spend more time talking about that. But, yeah, I'm definitely low on Crabtree. Okay, final question of are you panicking? Are you panicking on Doug Martin? 9 carries for 9 yards. Probably weren't that high on him to begin with after last season, but are you panicking now?
Well, actually, no. I was pretty high on him entering the season, meaning I didn't necessarily hold the injury against him looking into this season. But I think it's probably another case, like we talked about with Lacey in Seattle. Let's face it, he was up against a very good defense, and they've got a new quarterback there in McCown, which I think they're probably still working some kinks out there. So,
oh my gosh, he was terrible.
Which, believe me, I'm fully ready for the Mike Glennon era to resume in Tampa. But yeah, no, I'm not selling. I'm not panicking on Martin yet.
I'm not either. Don't start any running backs against the Panthers. That's not homerism. That's serious. he didn't really have any chance with that front seven.
No,
So
right. The defensive line in Carolina is just, I mean, it's top 5 in the league any week. So
top 5. Come on, better than that. Yeah, it is the time to trade for Doug Martin right now. All right, let's get to the little happier side of things, Michael, and play Are You Buying On?
Ooh, I don't know. I don't know, Scott, if this is going to be happy or not.
Are you buying on Justin Forsett? 11 carries for 70 yards and a touchdown. I think Pierce was benched after he fumbled 8 snaps into the game. The big news today was that Ray Rice was released from the team. So this could be a thing for Forsett going forward. Are you buying into Forsett?
I definitely am, personally. Bernard Pierce just has shown that he apparently can't be a featured back. He can't be relied on, even after last year with his sub 3 yards a carry season, and then he fumbles early this season. I mean, that was pretty quick for him. So, and look, Justin Forsett is not a bad running back. I mean, I went back and looked. He's averaged 4.9 yards a carry for his career. And he still only has, I think he's 29, but he has less than 400 carries for his career. So I think there's a lot of tread left on those tires. And look, in that kind of scheme with the zone blocking Gary Kubiak has, yeah, I would be buying on Forsett. I think it's possible he is a running back 2 for this season.
Okay, I think that's insane. I feel like the reason that Forsett hasn't had a lot of carries in his career is because he's pretty small. I mean, to me, he's sort of a third down back, and that's really all he can be. And keep in mind that in this game, the Ravens were down, and as we mentioned earlier, Flacco was throwing the ball 60-plus times. I think we've definitely uncovered a time split here between Pierce and Forsett, but there's not going to be a lot of games where they're not going to have any opportunities to run on early downs. I think that this is sort of just the way this game went. And yes, Pierce did fumble, and that was bad, and I'm not sure he's any good either, but I don't think that Forsett's just going to take off and carry the ball 20 times a game going forward. To me, this sort of turns Pierce into a Mark Ingram type of player here, where he's getting some of the work, but it's definitely going to be split. Although we've seen Pierce catch the ball a little bit before. He's definitely not in the top 30 the rest of the way, but I don't think it's time to just drop him outright in really any formats. By the way, Forsett has been a very good blocker, though. We've seen that in his PFF ratings over the years. So that's probably a chance for you to make an impact.
Well, and he plays for a Harbaugh, who they love stuff like that. So, I'm buying on Forsett personally. I'm not saying for dynasty purposes or, I don't think you should blow your entire free agent bank on him, but. Look, I think he could be decent the rest of the way, especially now that there's just no one else there now. I mean, the depth chart is completely cleared. So, but
they have that rookie Lorenzo Taliaferro too, by the way. So if Pierce is really that big of a disaster, he may be a guy to add as maybe a second half of the season speculative play. Are you buying on Knowshon Moreno? Going into this game, it really wasn't clear who was going to be the lead back for the Dolphins, and Miller looked like it early, actually. He had the early touchdown. He was getting work early. But Moreno was just spectacular, honestly. 24 carries, 134 yards, and a touchdown, just 15 touches for Miller. Big number, but by comparison to Moreno, a much smaller percentage of the overall pie. Moreno, 3.0 yards after contact per attempt. Miller, less than 2. What do you think here about Moreno? Is he clearly the running back to own for the Dolphins?
I think so. Yeah, I'm pretty convinced. I mean, I had, as you and I know, I had an article last week where I was completely off the Lamar Miller bandwagon, and yeah, I think this game just proved it. I mean, I still think they're probably going to sprinkle Miller in there, but look, they've been looking for somebody to take that job for a couple years now, and I think Moreno. Look, I think he's good enough to do it. So, yeah, I would be. I would buy on Moreno right now.
I agree. He just looks so much more physical than Miller, who's a little bit smaller anyway. I think that meshes better with their offensive line situation. I will note that Miller got all the receptions for the team, but in my mind, that just is really a place where Moreno could potentially encroach going forward as well. He was a very good pass catcher last year for the Broncos. So, yeah, Moreno, top 20 back for me the rest of the way. All right, Michael, are you buying on Devin Hester? He's on the Falcons, if people didn't realize that. 5 catches for 99 yards on 6 targets.
You can't even say that without laughing, Scott. You can't even say that without laughing.
What's that, 100 yards? Are you buying?
No, absolutely not. Look, let me say this: if you're in a league that scores everything, including return yards, there's like a sliver that I might. But even with that, no, I'm not. Look, as much as Matt Ryan owners would love for him to throw for 450 yards a game, it ain't gonna happen. So no, I think this was a fluke thing. You've still got Julio, you've still got Harry Douglas, and yeah, you've got Roddy White, who, look, depending on the severity of his injury, maybe, but even then, I don't know that they necessarily view Hester as a reliable option in the passing game. I just don't see it. But no, I'm not buying on Hester. Are you?
Would you rather have Hester or Harry Douglas the rest of the way?
Douglas, all day.
I'd rather have Hester.
Wow, really?
I'm not sure I consider either of them a fantasy asset, but we have seen Ryan support 3 receivers in the past. Maybe Levine Toilolo is going to be the one that emerges there, but I feel like we've seen enough of Douglas to know that he's not. So I think this is probably just better news for Matt Ryan than anybody else, but yeah. I'm at least a little bit interested in Hester. Probably not adding him in any formats, but I'm watching. All right, Michael, are you buying? Go ahead.
To that point, if White's injury is serious, yeah, Hester immediately moves into the number 3 slot there. Which, look, they've already said they're going more 3 wide formations rather than utilizing the tight end position like they did with Gonzalez last year. So yeah, I could maybe see it if Roddy White's out for a significant amount of time.
Yeah, Toilolo got a lot of run too, so I'm not sure that we're just assuming that he's not going to play as much as Gonzalez did. He didn't really do anything fantasy there, but he could be on field quite a bit. Michael, are you buying on Brian Quick for the Rams? Another 99-yard performance, this time with 7 catches and 9 targets. No other wide receiver on the Rams had more than 3 targets. Are you buying into Quick?
I might, actually. I think I'd probably say yes. Like you said, he was by far the most targeted receiver. I mean, by a boatload. I mean, he had 9 compared to, like you said, the next closest guy with 3. So, yeah, I would probably buy. I mean, only because, hey, we've seen it before where the number 1 receiving option on some really bad teams can rack up some fantasy points pretty quickly. So, yeah, I might buy on that. Only, like I said, only because I think he's probably the top option there at this point. What about you?
To a certain extent, yeah, I think he's worth a pickup in deeper formats, maybe 14-team leagues or deeper or leagues where you have additional bench spots. It's been a couple of years, but he was maybe a top 40 overall pick in an NFL draft. Had a lot of talent coming out of college. One of Brian Fontaine's, your predecessor's favorite players. I kind of wish he was here for that and to talk about Jake Locker. Are you buying on him, Michael? 266 passing yards and 2 passing touchdowns, 6 carries as well on the grounds. Are you buying in on Locker at all?
Yes, at least until he gets hurt again. So, yeah, I think Locker's got a couple things going for him. Obviously, his receivers, I think, are pretty underrated. I mean, he's got a pretty good a group of receivers to throw to in Hunter and Kendall Wright. And Delanie Walker's, not bad either. He's not top 10, but he's I think firmly top 20 for me. And look, he's got Ken Wisenhunt as a coach who has proven he's a very good offensive mind. So I think with those 2 things, Locker has a fighting chance. I don't think he'll be your quarterback 1 this year or any other year, but if you're maybe a 2 quarterback league or need a spot starter, I'd be okay with Locker, I think, on my team.
He's not a quarterback 1 for the year, but he may be a quarterback 1 this week playing Dallas. I mean,
can we just stream the quarterbacks who ever play Dallas going forward?
I mean, seriously. I mean, I would be very tempted to play Locker over somebody like Nick Foles this week, being completely serious. I think he could have a monster week, and I think he could have a top 15 year potentially, depending on if he's able to stay healthy. All right, Michael, wow, that was sort of rapid fire. We're getting through this a lot faster than I thought, which is making me happy. But I think we need to enter the defense and special teams corner of the podcast, which we've gotten some really positive feedback on in the past. Sarcasm. But I think there were some really major injuries, especially on the defensive side, that could affect how you're deploying defenses. And there were, frankly, some surprisingly good performances from defenses. Now is really the time that you need to be making those adds in season. This is sort of the time of the year when you sort of discover teams like the Chiefs and Panthers from last year. So let's talk about a couple of the injuries, Michael, and how they affect your opinions of the teams. Let's start with the Chiefs. Again, they were the number one defense in a lot of formats last year. They lost inside linebacker Derek Johnson for the year. I think I'm not sure if it was Achilles. I think it was an Achilles injury.
Mm-hmm.
Does this? I mean, people drafted them like a top 5 defense this year. Does this eliminate the chances that they can be even a fantasy starting defense for you?
Not necessarily. I don't think. I think they could still be a starting defense, but I definitely think they're nowhere near as highly as people had them ranked, like you alluded to. So, because let's face it, they had a really strong first half of the season last year, sort of tapered off. And look, they still are in a division with the Denvers and the San Diegos of the world, who they have to play 4 times throughout the year. And to lose a guy like Johnson, who has been very good in the middle, I think that affects them. So, could they be your starter, a low-end starting defense for you? Yeah, but are they going to be a top 5 by any means? No, definitely not.
I think they may be a streamer quality defense at best at this point. They do still have some pass rushers, so I think against teams with maybe lesser offensive line talent than the Titans, that they may be an option there. But, I mean, Johnson was a tremendous player. They already lost some depth at the cornerback position as well. So I don't think I see them as a top 10 defense anymore. So feel free to drop them to pick up a hot defense or stream them as is necessary. They got absolutely torched by the Titans, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
One team that fared a little bit better despite an injury was the Texans defense. And even though they were a really bad defense last year, I think a lot of people, including us, were buying into them as a sleeper this year. They have J.J. Watt, the best defensive player in football. They drafted the number 1 defensive player, Jadeveon Clowney. But it's Clowney that's hurt. I think he tore a meniscus in his knee. Could be out maybe 4 to 8 weeks, maybe 6. So we don't really know exactly how long he'll be out and how long he'll be ineffective when he returns. But does this dampen your opinion of the Texans as a potential sleeper defense?
No, I think for me they're still in that streamer quality. I'm not ready to bank on them every week just yet. Especially now with Clowney out for at least a month. So, but I think they're definitely creeping up there. I mean, look, like you said, you still have J.J. Watt, who's good for 20 sacks a year. So, so I think they're firmly in the streamer category for me. And look, with a couple more performances, and look, Washington offense is not bad. I mean, their offensive line may be bad, but they've got a lot of very good skill position players. So I think it was pretty impressive what they did. I think I just want to see it a couple more times before I'm a believer. What about you?
I pretty much feel exactly the same way. I think, again, they're a little bit of a sleeper now, and I'm fine using them in matchups like against Washington, where I'm a little bit less scared of the offense as compared to, say, the Colts, which I'm sure they'll face. I wouldn't want to start them there, but by all means, probably half their matchups I'm willing to start them, and still willing to consider them more of a sleeper. I would have them ahead of the Chiefs at this point. Let's talk about some other teams that had good performances and whether or not you think we should pick them up. Maybe if you, like I say, have the Chiefs and you need to replace them. The Titans had a really strong showing against the Chiefs, as we mentioned. They're only owned in 2% of ESPN leagues. What do you think about the Titans? Are they worth adding?
I think so. I would definitely. I think they're firmly in that streamer category. And look, I think personally they probably got a better shot to be an every week team because they have a lot of good players on defense, and they switched to the 3-4 this year, which at least yesterday was pretty effective. So I would buy them. I'd be good with that.
I'm still kind of in a wait and see mode there, partially due to the schedule. Coming up, they have the Cowboys, then Bengals, and at the Colts in the next 3. So I kind of want to see if they can get through that relatively unscathed. Then I think I'll probably buy into them at that point when they have the home for the Browns, home for the Jaguars, at the Redskins, home Texans, and at the Ravens. It's a pretty strong 5-team schedule there in the middle of the season. So I'd play a little wait and see there. The team I might pick up in their stead is the Dolphins. Again, we talked about how successful they were against the Patriots, putting pressure on Tom Brady. They're owned in just 3% of ESPN leagues. They have at the Bills, home for the Chiefs, and at the Raiders for the next 3. So that might be my number 1 pickup among the basically free-to-own defenses at this point. Are you buying into the Dolphins, or was that more of a concern for the Patriots specifically?
No, I would buy. I mean, look, they have very good pass rushers in Wake and Burnett. I mean, they just terrorized the Patriots line yesterday. So from that standpoint, like you said, they've got a pretty favorable schedule going forward. So, no, I would never have any problem starting them, I think, every week, quite honestly. I think you're good. I think they're going to create a lot of pressure every week and create a lot of turnovers.
Okay, the team that I had ranked as the number one defense this last week, the Jets, they did hold the Raiders to 14 points. Do you think they're legit going forward? Obviously, their run defense is tremendous, but maybe some questions about their pass defense?
I think it's one of those where I wouldn't be ready to panic or buy yet. I think they did probably what was expected yesterday, playing a rookie quarterback in the first game of the season. And I think they're good. I don't know if they're going to be necessarily, top 10 or a dominant defense yet. But, yeah, that's another one who I wouldn't have a problem streaming based on the matchup, though, especially if they can play the Raiders every week.
Yeah, and that's the kicker, really. To me, the Jets are much better than a streamer defense, but you really can't own them for the time being just because of how brutal their schedule is. They go at the Packers, home for the Bears, home for the Lions, at the Chargers, home for the Broncos, and at the Pats over the next 6 weeks.
Yeah,
I mean, you literally can't play them any week. But if I'm in, say, a 16-team or deeper league, I'm at least considering rostering them if basically I'm not giving up a legitimate sleeper at a wide receiver or running back or something. Because I think in the second half of the season they really could be maybe even a top 5 defense, but definitely a top 10 defense. I think you can probably safely drop them, watch them give up a lot of points to a couple of those opponents, and then safely pick them back up down the line. Definitely a team I'm watching, though. Another team with a lot of success, and this might have had something to do with the Rams' injuries and lack of other options, but the Vikings had a really huge performance here. Are you buying into them as a potential option for DSTs?
They're one of those teams also that's sort of like the Jets, where I think in a vacuum they're very good, but, I mean, they're in the NFC North. I mean, they have to play the Lions, Packers, and Bears 6 times, right, which is like half their schedule in a fantasy season. So I think for that reason, I think for streaming purposes, I think they're fantastic. I mean, depending on who they're playing, if they're playing people like the Rams, yeah, I think they're great. I mean, they have a very good defense. They obviously brought in Zimmer as their head coach, who's been a very good defensive coordinator in Cincinnati and Dallas, for that matter. So, yeah, they're firmly in the streaming category for me as well.
I think they're probably stream-worthy. It's going to be tough in the meantime, though, with home Patriots, at Saints, home Falcons, at Packers, and home Lions coming up. There are a lot of teams with just insane early matchups, the Panthers included, by the way. So I could be in a really bad state come about 5 weeks from now. But, I think you just have to avoid the Vikings like the Jets in the meantime, but look for them again around mid-season to potentially pick it up. These are sort of the reasons why I think you can really mix and match defenses, especially in shallow formats. But Vikings and Jets, maybe not the way to go. Maybe take a look at the Dolphins, everyone. Whew. Okay, Michael, we just had sort of a rapid-fire 40 minutes of fantasy talk. Do you have anything you want to talk about before we go and actually watch a little bit of these Monday Night Football games?
Well, yeah, so are we going to do kickers and punters this podcast, Scott, or next week?
I think really punters are going to probably take 2 or 3 episodes to really get all that juiciness in. So everyone's still listening to the show right now. We're kidding. We're not going to do that. But, I think we'll probably get a good mix of this going forward, a lot of reaction to what we see. But we'll try to work in some dynasty talk on the way as well, given that sort of Michael and my calling card, so to speak. But anyway, I think that wraps up a good show there, Michael. Thanks for joining me again this week, and thanks for all of you listeners for tuning in to the Fantasy Slant. We'll catch you again at the start of next week.